I had no idea about what I wanted to do in life, where I wanted to go, anything. All I know was that I'm come from a single parent home and that my mother need help in taking care of her children that she had. And I'm not the oldest, I am the third oldest. So I decided that, I probably need to get out and get a job. One of the problems I had with being the third child was that everything I got was hand me down, from one person to the next. And my mom used to work in private homes. Therefore, when she worked in private homes, she worked for the white people. So they would give her things to give her kids. So I was handing down from them. And what my sisters didn't get, I got third. So I was at that point in my life where I want to branch out, but I didn't know how to do it. So what I did was I have been going to this one particular church all my life, the Greater Springfield Baptist Church, which is located on the corner of Jones Avenue and Griffin. And my choir director, was Mrs. Susan May Carter, introduced me to a lady who had just moved in the neighborhood who needed a babysitter. And she thought that my mother had raised me and my sisters to be different from everybody else. So she thought I was an ideal person to work with this lady. At that time, I had no idea who she was. So Mrs. Carter made an appointment for me to meet this lady who stayed across the street on Sunset. And I met her I think it was in June. And I walked across the street to meet her. And this lady by the name of Mrs. Lockhart, who was that time, I think she was the cook or the maid of the house. Anyway, she opened the door for me and she just said, you must be Patricia, come on in. And so I came into this house and it was, now remember, I didn't tell you I was from the project. I was from the projects, the John J. Egan Home projects. And the projects is entirely different from a house. All the floors in the projects was like concrete. When I walked into this house, it was like a whole different ball game for me, being in the house of a Black person. And it was a nice house. It was like when you walk into the front door, it's a foyer. At that time, I call it a hall because I didn't know any better. But you walk into this hallway, and on the right side of the hallway was these great big old carving pictures of Black people, but they were done in wood carving. And it was three of them, and they was like up, low, and low. That's the way they were hanging on the wall. And then there was a bench in the hallway that was like a wooden bench that you see in the park, but it was laminated and it was nice. It had a little bitty silver whatnot sitting on the table. And these are things I've never seen in my life before. So I walked on in, and then before you get to the front of the house, the floors was hardwood floors. They were shining so you could just see your face in it. Remember, the floors in the projects are concrete and they were dark gray. So that was entirely different. So I was amazed. And then this beautiful lady walked up and said, you must be Patricia. She says, I'm Coretta King. Welcome to my home. And so she took me right into the family room where they were getting ready to have dinner. And she was just talking to me, telling me what she wanted and everything. And then just made an appointment and said, you come back. Can you come back the next day about 6 o'clock in the evening? And she said, we will be having dinner then, and all my kids will be there, and you'll get a chance to meet them. So I still really didn't know who she really was. I've heard about at that time there was the Little Rock, Arkansas thing going on where they was bus boycotting, but I still had no clue that this was the Coretta Scott King and that I was in the home of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And at that time, Dr. King was considered a troublemaker here in Atlanta. You know, even though he was working for our civil rights, he was also disliked by a lot of people. So therefore, I never told anybody who I worked for, uh, because I guess I was, you say, ashamed that I was going to be a babysitter for these people. So, but anyway, it all worked out. That's how I met them. And that was in 1965. Here it is in 1921. And I mean, 2021. And I'm still affiliated with the King family. Now, when Mrs. King passed, I happened to be, I started off as a babysitter. I also, when Mrs. Lockhart left that house, she decided that she had to have surgery. And Miss King said to me, I'm going to need somebody while Mrs. Lockhart have surgery, and I want you to fill in for her while she's gone. Well, you know, my mother was a maid, and I had this hang up, and I said, I am not going to be a maid. This is not going to work, you know. But she wanted me to just stay there. She said, now uh, when Miss Lockhart come back, she said, I promise you, I will help you get a job. I said, okay. So I did it. So she showed me everything that I had to do. I didn't know how to cook. Um, I was hired to see about the kids. But when Miss Lockhart left, I was doing writing down. Mrs. King used to send her laundry out to be like sheets, like we wash our sheets. Miss King used to just put her sheets in the bag and send them to the laundry. I had to do that, send out stuff. The food was already cooked in the freezer. All I had to do was to warm up the food to make sure that the kids ate properly. I got their clothes ready for school for the next day, put them out the night before I left, set the table for breakfast in the morning. I did all that. So when Mrs. Lockhart came back, Mrs. King did keep her promise. She got me a job at Citizens Jewelry Company, which was on the corner of Mitchell and Forsyth Street, across in front of this. It's a building that there used to be CNS Bank. Now that building across from CNS Bank, that I don't know what that bank building is now, but Citizen Jewelry used to sit right on that corner there. Well, she got me this job in Citizens Jewelry, and I thought, oh, this is going to be nice. I'm going to be working in a jewelry store, right? Right. Okay. When I went into that jewelry store, you have to move your way up. It was very few Black peoples in the store. There was one girl named Vivian Garrison who worked behind the customer service desk who looked almost white. She was there. The rest of the Black people there was either maids, working in shipping. I just so happened to get this job where I was polishing silver, and silver was all around the wall in the store. So every day I go in, if this piece of silver tarnished, I had to polish the silver. And I was determined, that's another maid job, right? I said, this is not going to work. So I worked real hard, and I moved up from that position to the work in the flat silver department. And this is when I learned about flat silver, how many place settings in a place setting, a teaspoon, knife, fork, salad fork, and a soup spoon. I learned the different silver patterns like Strasbourg, Toll, a whole Tara, a whole bunch of silver powders. So I educated myself on the silver. And every time somebody got married, they come in, they register. I could talk intelligent about a place setting, what it consists of, and the pattern that they will pick out. Okay, so I worked in this store for 2 years, I think. And then I got a job at Pfizer, which is a pharmaceutical company. But while I was doing that, I was still open space for Mrs. King then. So I worked with Mrs. King on Wednesday. I would go to Pfizer every day. And Pfizer is what you heard about Pfizer lately because it's a pharmaceutical company and it was located in Doraville, Georgia. So I went all the way to Doraville, Georgia every day. And then on my off day, at night when I got off from work, I would go back to Mrs. King's home before I got married to help with whatever she needed. I was an alteration girl. I took up the kids' pants. I did her clothes. I did sewing because I took sewing. I took home economic in high school. So I knew how to do all these things. So Mrs. King is a type of person that once she gets used to you, she trusts you. She put all her faith in you. So she never let me go. She just kept holding on to me. And she kept finding things to find room to put me. So Pfizer decided that they was going to move their office to North Carolina. So they had to downsize. So at that time I had gotten married and I said that I was going to commute from North Carolina to back to Atlanta just to stay with Pfizer because I figured this is a good place for me to be. I'm working in the office. I'm learning how to do pharmaceutical. I can pronounce these different names, and I had worked my way up from what you call it. At that time, they had key punches. They don't have key punches now. They had key punches, and when the hospitals call in their order, the key puncher will punch them in, and then they will give it to us to pull apart and separate. And you put one sheet here, one color here. Well, you know how you do it. So anyway, I wasn't moving fast enough. The man told me, he said, Miss Latimore, I was Cook then. He said, Miss Cook, if you don't hurry up and pick up your speed, we're going to have to let you go. I said, okay. So I worked all that time just learning how to sort, throw the thing because I like my job. So finally I moved up to work my way up to the order department where I was able to talk to the hospitals on phone, the nurses, or pharmacy, and take their order, get them ready to go to the key puncher. And then when I left that company, and I think it was like I worked for them for 18 years, I was working for the LP division, which is Lincoln Packard division. And so I really liked that job, but still, I'm still working for Mrs. King, right? So when Pfizer got ready to change up everything, Mrs. King made me an offer I couldn't refuse. She said, if you come work for me full time, she said, I'll give you this much money. So I said, okay, the money sounds good. So I said, okay, I'll work for her. So then I got a chance to come back to the house, work for her full time. And she made me, I was in charge of anybody that came into her home to work. I gave them instruction, trained them to do what they do. And my key role was to pay her bills. So we'll do signing checks. I let her sign the checks. I tell her what's due and everything. So I was paying the bills for her. And then I was also, which was my job, the part of my job I really loved was to go shopping for her. So Miss King liked to look good. And so she said, would you do shopping for me? Oh, that's nice, right? So I went shopping for her. And when I went shopping, I was shopping for her, but I was really shopping for myself, right? Because I was buying her things that I like, but hoping it would look good on her. But the problem she had with me was that the stuff I was buying was a little high, right? So she would check me on that. But when I bring in all these clothes, she'll try them on, and she would like everything I bought, which I like. I was excited about it because the first piece I bought her was from Lily Rubin's dress shop at Lenox. Mrs. King had to go to New Jersey to speak, and she needed this formal dress. And I went to Lily Rubin's and I picked out this beautiful canary yellow dress. and Mrs. King looked good in bright colors, right? And so this dress was a long formal, and it had a satin long jacket to it. Really, it was silk, and it was trimmed and iridescent. I think it's like beads or something. But anyway, it was really nice. Mrs. King had large arms. You know, her arms up here was large. So the jacket was long sleeves. So it was rather tight on her. And I thought she wasn't going to take it because of the price. But what we did, we got a lady to come in to do alteration, and they put a gusset under the seam where you go into the seam, and you add a piece of material about so wide, but it will be underneath the arm, so therefore you wouldn't see the gusset. So she looked real pretty in that dress. I was trying to see if I had a picture of it here.
Oh,
But
yes. We would love to see pictures.
if I had thought about it, I would have got my picture stuff out. But I've been trying to work on my memoir too. That's not
Oh,
so I don't know if I got that particular picture handy here, but it was a beautiful dress. In a way, she liked that dress. She made a hit in it, and I also, like I said, she got hooked on me, and so when anything that she wanted done, she preferred I do it. So she taught me to go to Rachel Ward, who was a beautician here in Atlanta. She sent me to her shop to work into her shop, and she would teach me how to do hair. So Mrs. King, when she went to this particular program, some lady that she fixed her hair up in a Chinese style, where it was just rolled back so many rows in a way. I learned how to do that. I learned how to do that very well, to the fact that after she got back off of that trip, we decided to use that hairdo for a while because it looked businesslike the way you do it when she's not dressed up. You can also do it so that it would be businesslike. In a way, it was like a roll going back, like 3 rows going back to the back. And then you have these little baby doll curls hanging on the back and these little side kisses right here. And so I did that. So therefore she had to take me everywhere she go so that I could fix her hair. So here I was shopping, buying clothes for her. And at the same time, I was also dressing her. So that was my job during the time when we were doing King Week for a whole week. Whenever you saw Miss King step out on stage to make an appearance, she would say, "Pat dressed me," so she looked pretty good, you know.
yes.
So I was the secret person behind the wall who dressed her all the way up, even to her funeral.
Mm.
Now, I'm sorry. If I had known what I was going to talk about, I would have pulled some pictures, but I can't put my hand on my stuff now.
That's okay. We probably can. We might be able to. We can make it on another time and kind of show them, and we can like insert it in. So we'll get it. We'll catch them. We'll capture them.
Okay, so I have been with this King family ever since I got out of high school, and now I am working at. And when Mrs. King died, I was called her personal assistant. So I moved from the babysitter to in charge of the house. And then my final step was her personal assistant. And so the day after she had her stroke, Mrs. King had a stroke in 2000. And now we moved into the condo. We moved from Sunset into the condo in 2004. And when we moved to the condo, I had an office you just wouldn't believe. I could look out and see Stone Mountain. We
Oh,
were on the 29th floor, and I thought I was somebody.
you
I'm
are.
telling you. I thought I was somebody. So everybody addressed me as Miss Latimore, right? I'm so used to people calling me Pat. So everybody was dressing me at the condo as Miss Latimore. But anyway, we had this beautiful place up on at the what was the name? It was on Peachtree, 2660 Peachtree Road. That's where we stayed. And her floor was the 39th floor. And we took up two apartments and made them one big apartment. So it was a very nice apartment. And so my office led from, they call it an art gallery, down a long hall, and my office was at the end. And like I said, I had this great big old picture window. I had a patio outside, and I could see all over Georgia, which was beautiful at night. And so at this apartment, there was patios all around the bedrooms. And so Miss King's bedroom, she could see a beautiful part of Atlanta before she had her stroke. And so when she had her stroke, that's when everything took a turn uh, from the worst. I was there one morning. Uh, I could tell, when as you grow older, you would know that when people get a certain age, you just don't up and move them out of their location. And when you do that, it kind of messes with their mind because they get all confused. So Mrs. King, we moved her to the condo. At sunset, she was in her room. Her office was her bed. Everything on one side of her bed was papers that she did her work. And then she slept on the other side of the bed. So when we moved her from Sunset, we didn't take a whole lot of things from Sunset to the condo. So when we got to the condo, it was like a whole beautiful place, new furniture, new everything.
Mm.
And when I got to work every morning at the condo, I noticed that Mrs. King was getting confused because every time I got to work, my job wasn't hard. All I had to do was to open the mail and pay her bills, write down what the bills was, take them to her, let her sign off on them. Then she signed the checks. I put them in an envelope and mail them off. That shouldn't take all day to do. But when we moved to the condo, it took me all day to do a whole lot of things. And that was because Mrs. King, when she woke up, it was like she never could find this, she never could find that. So that means that I spent half of the day looking for papers and notes that she knows she had, but she couldn't find it because at sunset, it was right here. But
Mm.
when she moved to the condo, it was in a nice little office area and she didn't know where it was.
Mm.
So I say from 8 o'clock to 3 o'clock in the evening, I was looking for stuff.
Mm.
By 3 o'clock, I done found everything she wanted. And so therefore, I start my day at 3 o'clock and I start working late hours. Boy, I couldn't get out of there to 7 and 8 o'clock at night because I try to finish my work before I leave so that it won't carry on to the next day. So I was working late nights. And then some nights I had to do her hair. When I got through, I either had to wash her hair, roll her hair, get a, sell her for the next day. So it was like when I got home in the evening, it's like 9 o'clock, and I was just tired. Another thing that we found out when we were at the condo was that both of us was breaking down. We couldn't figure out how come we were so tired.
Mm.
Well, Mrs. King was holistic by then. Everything had to be organic. This, everything had to, it's like to drove
I
me
couldn't
crazy.
wait.
And
Wow.
so it was just like organic. So when they did the apartment, they put organic carpet in the apartment, but they didn't put no padding
Oh.
under the organic apartment, under the rug. So therefore, that's concrete. And to walk on concrete backwards and forward, those long hallways and everything, took a toll on my legs and her legs too before we figured it out. So then I started wearing tennis shoes every day to work. Like when I get upstairs, when I get out my car, out my parking place, I walk up with my heels and everything. But by the time I got to her house, my office, I had my other pair of shoes and I put them on so I looked like a tramp when I was around the house. When I got ready to leave out the door, I was clean, I thought. But anyway, that's that. So after she had a stroke, it was an ordeal that really took a toll on all of us. It took a toll on me the most because I was there the most, and then the kids was all going in separate directions. And so I had been traveling with her. We were going to this health club. She was changing her eating habits, and I knew what she liked to eat. And so when we got her in the hospital, she didn't want to eat the hospital food because remember, she's still holistic, right?
Right.
So I'm the only one that otherwise they was going to put a tube in her.
Oh no.
So to keep from putting a tube in her, I always had a credit card with my name on it that she paid the bill. So then I would go to the grocery store every night when I left the hospital, pick up stuff that I knew she liked, come home that night, cook it, puree it, and take it back to the hospital that morning so she will have breakfast and then she will have dinner and lunch. Now I did that the whole while she had her stroke. Okay. And I did it because the kids didn't know how to do it. They didn't know the way they had taught us. We had gone to Palm Air and we used to go to Hippocrates. Hippocrates is a health institute in West Palm Beach, Florida. Now, it teaches you how to eat raw food. And we ate raw food the whole while we were there. Now, the funnest things about this raw food thing was the first day we got to Hippocrates, we got there at lunchtime and we were late. So I figured, we late, so we're gonna have lunch, right? So they bring this great big old plate of salad food, and it's all raw. And they even had an ear of corn on the plate, right? And so I sit there and I ate all that stuff. And then I said, well, I can't wait to dinner. So dinner, we're here on time. So we're gonna have some good food, right? Well, that didn't happen. At dinner time, we had the same stuff.
Oh.
This big old platter of raw food.
Mm.
So
Oh.
with this raw food you had all of the sprouts, because sprouts was good for you. You had olives on there. You had an ear corn. You had some seaweed, because seaweed is salt. And the dressing you used was oil and vinegar, right? Now oil and it's vinegar, but it's Bragg's amino. You use vinegar and Bragg's amino. Now think about it. Now that's not very tasty, right?
No.
Ate that stuff for what's it? We stayed there for 2 weeks.
Oh
Two
no.
weeks. I ate that stuff for 2 weeks. Now on Wednesday was a good day. Wednesday we had liquids. Wednesday we had pureed what you call it? Cantaloupe with cinnamon on top of it. Either pureed honeydew with cinnamon sprinkle on it. That was soup day. And then at night, we might get a real bowl of soup. that's made with the raw vegetables that we had all week. You know, they put it in the soup and they give it to you. But then we would have this thing called ice cream. Now, that was really good. They would take, have you ever seen an apple banana?
Uh,
Apple banana is a little bitty banana. And what you do, you peel it, you know, and then you stick that banana in a freezer. And then we had a juicer. We invested in a juicer. You would take that little banana and put it in this juicer and turn it, and it'll come out like a Dairy Queen.
Oh,
Oh wow.
Uh-huh. So, but it was no. But then they had this chocolate syrup, but you buy it at 7 on a whole store, and
yes.
it's like a powder, like a curb or something like that. And you mix it, and you put that on the banana, and it really tastes like ice cream. Now, those 2 days I loved because we had ice cream, and it really tastes like ice cream. So if you ever see those little bitty, they're little bitty green bananas, but they call them apple bananas, and
Okay.
you can just peel them, put them in a Ziploc bag, and put them in the freezer. And then get your juicer and put them in the juicer, and they'll come out like a Dairy Queen. You know how the Dairy Queen come out? It come out like that, and it's very tasty. It's not fattening either.
Oh,
So, but you know what? I mean, I just all that stuff we used to eat. So when she got sick, I knew how to fix all this stuff. They had given us this great big old notebook with recipes in it. So that's how I prepared her food when she had the stroke. And with her eating the food that I prepared in the, I think it was Piedmont Hospital that she was at, she was able to come back home and get back to the condo before she passed away. And the night that it was the last Salute to Greatness dinner that she had, she didn't go to the service that year. That was in 2006. She didn't go to the service that year. We stayed at the condo. We watched it all on TV, but she wanted to go to that banquet that night. But she wanted me to get her ready to go to that banquet that night. So quite naturally, I had to get ready from my house and then come back to the condo. And but she should have gotten herself up, get started to get ready. But she would not move from the table until Pat got there. So when Pat got there, I had to figure out what to do here because remember, she's had a stroke. She can't do too much for herself. So that means I got to get her dressed. And then I got to put her on something that makes her look like nothing is wrong with her, right? And she was all jacked up. So when I got there, not knowing that she was going to the dinner in advance, I had to kind of think fast. So on my way to the condo, I was trying to think about what did she have in the closet that I can make work. So I know she had this black dress, and it was a top and a skirt. And this particular top had rhinestones down the side and rhinestone down this side. And then I think it has rhinestone at the tail. So therefore, it was one of these skirts that you couldn't see your shape,
Oh,
but it would work. But little did I know, the dress was too big, right? So I said, okay, now you got to figure out how to fix this. So I got a safety pin. It took me the longest to find safety pins. You know, safety pins should be at every woman's touch.
mind a
But
right.
I had to find these great big old safety pins. So I got these great big old safety pins, and I had to take the back of that that blouse and pull it together so it'll fit her neck. And so I had to pin it because I didn't have time to sew it. And so now I got to fix her hair to cover
The safety pin.
the safety pin.
Oh wow.
And not only did I do that, then I said, okay, now she don't have no boobs, right?
Oh.
So I went all the way back to when I was in school.
Oh,
Now, when I was in school, the Babylon shirt used to be popular.
okay.
You, I don't know nothing about Babylon shirts, but the boys used to wear the Babylon shirts, and the girls wear the Babylon shirt. So if you didn't have a bust, you faked it, you stuff it, you do everything you can to make it work. So either you buy pads
Oh,
now, or you buy pads. They used to sell the pads that you could stick in your bra. Anyway, we ain't had no pads up there. So we didn't have a whole lot of things. So what I had to do was to make all this work. So I decided to go get stockings. I got a whole bunch of stockings, and I balled them up and I put them in a bra. And that one looked good. So I did the other one. So that one looked good, right? So then she looked like she was a healthy, beautiful woman. All I had to do was to fix her hair now. So I got her hair, and at that time, her face was twisted and everything. But we got Mrs. King ready, and I felt real good. She looked good, but I didn't know they were going to take a picture of her.
oh,
I thought they wasn't going to take a picture. So if you go and see the picture on the internet or something, because it did make front page of the paper that day, I wasn't pleased the way she looked, but she thought she looked real pretty. And when Mrs. King was an opera singer, and if you notice, she had I think it was her right arm. When you have a stroke on your left side, it
the-
affects your right side. And if you have a stroke on your right side, it affects your left side.
mhm.
So I think she had it on the left side, so it affected her right side. So that night, when we got to the Salute to Greatness dinner, and they rolled her out in the wheelchair, she knew that this was her last hurrah. So when she got up on the stage, she could remember something. She remember it was a certain way when you sing, how you take your hand and put this hand in it, and it held it up, because otherwise it was like a limp arm. But she took her hand and put it like it normally would. And when she stood up to greet the people, to smile, she was able to put her hand that way, and she didn't look like nothing was wrong with her, except her face was twisted.
Wow.
But anyway, I felt real good because I got her ready for that day, and I also got her ready for the day that the public went to view her body. And that was a hard task. At that time, I think Oprah had her on her show. Now, this really teed me off. Oprah had her on her show, and they want to change her hairdo, right?
Uh-oh.
But for some reason, nobody wanted to say who really did her hair when she won that Oprah, right? So what they could have done was to take me to the studio with them to do her hair, but they didn't want to do that for some strange reason. So they kept calling me back to find out what I used on her hair, so that, because Miss King had this curly, fine hair, she didn't use a lot of perm. And if she used a lot of perm, her hair was shed. So I knew exactly what to use on her hair. And so they kept calling back, wanting to know what did I use on her hair, so they wouldn't put the wrong stuff on there. Anyway, they did her hair that day. It looks really, really pretty. So Oprah found a man that could do her hair for her from that point on. Okay. And that man was getting paid a lot of money. When I did her hair, I didn't get paid half that much money, right? So that teed me off. It really did, to the fact that one day the fella didn't come do her hair because she had to go somewhere, and they wanted me to do her hair. And do you believe that I said no? I said, no, I'm not going to do her hair. Let him do her hair. I was real ugly. So anyway, the fella said, I tell you what, he said, if you do her hair when I can't do her hair, I'll pay you $100. I said, okay, deal. But that still wasn't enough money. But I did her hair anyway, because he got paid more than that. Trust me. And if I'm not mistaken, when a movie star get their hair done, they get paid at least $10,000 for each time they do their hair. They don't care where they go.
Wow.
So when this fella didn't show up, they wanted me to fill in for him. But see, Oprah was paying that fella to do her hair, whether he came or not. And so he only gave me $100 out of that lump sum money that he had. So, but that's okay. I was all right with it. But anyway,
Mm.
when she passed, um, once you pass, your hair, you can't do a whole lot with your hair because your hair snaps. It breaks real easy.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember Mrs. King was in Mexico when she died. They sent her to Mexico because they was trying to save her.
Mm.
And when she got to Mexico, she was sicker than they thought. So that's why she died in Mexico. So they had to ship her body back to Atlanta. And so when they shipped her body, flew her body back to Atlanta, the kids was with her. Okay. And so um, they had to do autopsies on her before they brought her back. So that means that they cut her hair. They
Mm.
cut her hair. Nobody knew they cut her hair but me. Okay. So when we got to when her body came in to the hangar out at Fulton Industrial, I want to make sure I was there. And the reason why I want to make sure I was there was because every time Mrs. King would go out of the city and she come back, I would be the first person she called uh, to let me know she was back in the city, and plus to get her messages and what have you.
Mm.
Anything that I had not told her over the phone, then she would communicate why security was bringing her back to the house. So I felt that she was coming back on the plane, that I needed to be there when she got to the hangar. So even though her kids was on the plane with her, when they got off the plane, they went one way, and Willie Watkins was in charge of her body, so he took her to the funeral home, and so I followed the car all the way to the funeral home, and I waited until they brought her body out. And when they brought her body out, they had her on this table, and they had her hair stretched, her head hanging back on the table. And I could tell that her hair had been cut. And so, therefore, I did shopping. I picked out the outfit that she had on, and the kids approved it. And we went to dress her that day. And so, this fellow who was paid all that money to do her hair had to do her hair that day. But we had to go back to the old style because they had cut her hair. So with her laying in the casket, I had to figure out how to bring her hair from this side over to this side so it'll look like her hair, and nobody would see this side over here because they had cut her hair. So therefore, instead of Ralph doing her hair, I did her hair for the funeral. And every time they opened that casket, if Miss Ferris was up front, she'll yell, "Pat, you need to come do Miss King's hair." Uh, uh, that was the hardest job I ever done in my life, to comb somebody's hair that had died. And
Mm.
I did it 3 times.
Wow.
3 times.
And Miss Ferris is, for listeners, Miss Ferris is Christine Ferris, and that's Martin Luther King's sister.
You said what now?
No, I was letting the listeners know that Miss Ferris, that's Martin Luther King's sister, if for anyone.
Yeah, that's her, Dr. King's sister. And she's still living today.
She is. She's my.
And I think she's 93.
Yep.
She's 93 years old.
She used to teach classes at Spelman.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
So she just kept calling me, telling me to come up front wherever I was. They'll come get me to make sure when they open up that casket that Miss King hair and everything was in place. But by the time the day of the funeral, she really had just, because I think it went on for a week or so. It was the hardest week of my life,
I'm sure.
but we got through it. And so today I work at the King Center Library and Archives, and I'm considered as an what you call it, an archivist technician, and take care of. I'm still dealing with Mrs. King's things. I am archiving her belongings. We stayed at Sunset for about a year after Mrs. King died, and we were there archiving her belongings. And so at some point, they will be on display at the King Center.
Nice.
We have some this. If you haven't been to the King Center lately, you need to go by the King Center and check it out because it's been kind of remodeled. If you go to Washington, you will see the words of Dr. King carved on the stones up there. At the King Center, you will see the words of Dr. King and some of Mrs. King that's carved on the walkway and the Freedom Walkway.
Mhm.
So they have done a lot good now. It's still remodeling going on while we are not there. But when we open back up, and I think they are pushing this be love community now. It's so much violence in the city that we have launched this Be Love community. So go on the King Center website, take a pledge,
Okay.
and we can stop some of this violence that's going around the world today.
Yep.
And then you can make a donation to the King Center because they are taking donation. And we have made more money on the King Center doing this virus thing. In other words, I was telling Dr. King that really this virus is the best thing. It helps some people in a way, these small business, because they're getting help from places that you wouldn't know. And Dr. King is getting more speaking engagement on virtual thing than ever before. So when we open back up, I think the store is open from 4 for a certain time up until 4 o'clock now. You can go in and they're going to be launching Be Love's souvenirs that you can go by and pick up. And we have in the archives, they have students that comes up and do research on on Dr. King, SCLC, and SNCC, any of those organizations that you can learn more about Black history.
Mhm.
And I say to you all that you need to read your Black history, find out about your Black history before you make changes. I was telling Pam and her mother the other night, well, not Pam, but her mother the other night, that so many things have changed here in the city of Atlanta.
Yep.
And then this young generation wants to come around and change things, which I think is okay. But before you make a change, learn about the history that's already there. Because sometimes that history don't need to be moved. It can be added to, but it don't need to be moved. Because I figure that the generation after you that comes up need to know how you got to where you are. And you can't get there until you learn your history.
Yep.
Exactly.
Miss Latimore, I want to ask, can you share what are some of the biggest changes that you have witnessed in the city of Atlanta over the years? Some good, some bad. What are some of the changes that you witnessed that have really stuck out to you throughout the years?
Okay, one of the things that bothers me dearly is the name changing of streets.
Okay.
And that's because you don't know. It's just like maybe 20 years later, they're going to change the name and put somebody else's name. I've always figured that when you change a name, when you have a name that a street that you want to honor somebody, let it be a new street versus changing the name. Now, Ashford Street, Lowry Boulevard used to be Ashford Street. Martin Luther King used to be Hunter Street, okay? And Boone used to be Simpson Road. Now, uh, at that time, I haven't done the research. I don't know who Hunter is. I don't know who Ashby is. You know, I don't know any of these people. But if I known they was gonna change the street name, I probably would have paid more attention to it so I could learn the history of those people before they changed the name and put, you know, our local leader's name on it.
Right.
Now, they put in every city and state, if you go to a Martin Luther King street, it's a slum area.
Yep. We
It's a
always
slum.
we always notice that.
It's a slum area. Now, Cassine Reed is making Martin Luther King Street a different street. You know, he's making it better. He's making the neighborhood look better. But if you go further out where I'm staying now and you get up here by 285, it's the worst area in the world because you got people fly up and down Martin Luther King like it's 285. So all those street signs, and they done put this thing in the middle of the road. So it's like one way down and one way up. But this younger generation don't seem to care about what's been done in the city. So they fly up and down the road. And when they get to that thing in the middle of the street, you got to run into it. You got to tear up the grass that they done put that. But if you go out Lennox Road, if you go out Lennox Road and they got this same thing in the middle of the street, you see how pretty the flowers and everything are. But when you get on our side of town, we walk through it. We throw trash in it. We sit on the corner and sell water and you leave your trash there. I mean, it's just like we don't care. We don't care. But it's Cassine Reed was trying to make Martin Luther King Jr. Not a slum area. And we as a people should try to keep it that way. But you got people that really don't care. That's because they don't know their history. And if they knew their history, I think they do better. You do better when you know better. Right. You know, and that's one of the problems I have. And when they start making changes to the city, now Vine City used to start at Magnolia Street. That's right over there by Sunset. It went all the way down Magnolia Street, straight to where the Omni is, because all that was it was just like the bus went through there. And when the bus go through there, you see all these houses that was made out of wood. You see these old people sitting out on the porch in the rocking chair. Well, none of that is there now. Nope. They have made the Omni there. And they made sure that Vine City starts now up here where Washington Park is, and come all the way back down. Now, Vine City never went that far, but somebody up at the Capitol decided that they'll change the map. And when they changed the map, they changed everything. Now, I tell you one thing else that bothered me. I went to the school called E.R. Carter. Okay, and I meant to do some research on that. E.R. Carter Elementary School, and it sits right on, it used to be Ashford Street, now it's Lowry Boulevard. It's right there by the model station, just after you pass Bronner Brothers, where it used to be Bronner Brothers, but you know, this is big old building with all of Black history in it, on the corner of Lowry and Martin Luther King. Yep. Okay, that building used to be the Bronner Brothers beauty thing and Seller Brothers funeral home, all in that thing. But if you come down a little further there, on the left-hand side of the street, there is a building. It's called some kind of Life building. But that used to be an elementary school that I went to, E.R. Carter Elementary School. And with me trying to do my memoir, the lady that I had working with me, she was trying to work with me, she did research on E.R. Carter. Well, I found out then, just recently, that E.R. Carter was somebody important. Well, I knew the school was named after him, but I didn't know the history behind it. But E.R. Carter, if I'm not mistaken, and I might not have it totally right, but I got it written down, that he was a reverend, and he had something to do with Spelman College.
Hmm.
Spelman College first thing was held in his church. And to me, if that's the case, then that school should have stayed E.R. Carter because that's history.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
That's history.
Friendship Baptist is where Spelman was started, and actually when they created all that new stuff where you're talking about Vine City, it actually they let them tear down Friendship Baptist Church where Spelman was started.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So it's just it's so much. And then the other day, um, um, up Hunter Street, which is now Martin Luther King, it used to be a place called Amos Drugstore. Amos Drugstore was a famous drugstore then, okay? And it sits on the corner, which used to be Telefair and Hunter Street. And Telefair lead into the projects where I come from. Anyway, I saw during Black History Month that they mentioned Amos Drugstore in the paper. And I have a habit, and I got a whole stack of papers here on the floor that I've been trying to work with, where one of the jobs I learned at Mrs. King was to read the newspaper because Black folks don't read the newspaper. So you read the newspaper, and if you see something interested in it, you cut it out, and you make sure you put the name of the paper and the date. You leave that on there. So I got a whole pack of newspapers, that I got to go through and cut up and do. But what was I saying that for?
The Amos Drugstore.
Huh?
Saw something about the Amos Drugstore in the newspaper.
Okay, yeah. So I saw it in there, because it's Black History Month.
Yep, last day.
The last day of Black History Month. And this was the first part of Black History Month that they talked about the Amos Drugstore. Now, I remember Amos Drugstore, and they had the family in Amos Drugstore on the paper, and the mama and the daddy was sitting at in Amos Drugstore. It was a drugstore, but it also had a soda fountain where they had those little red stews. And on that paper, it had the mama and the daddy sitting on the stool. And because I remember the word Amos Drugstore on Hunter Street, I decided to read the article. Come to find out that his daughter is a famous artist, and she was sitting on the other stool over here. This girl, the article is downstairs, but this girl, art is everywhere. It's in Spelman College.
Oh wow.
It's in Spelman College. They showed her work. It's in Spelman College, and it's also in New York. In the they mention all these places where her artwork is. And I said, golly, I knew this girl. I knew of her. I didn't know her personally, but I knew the family that owned this store, drugstore. But this girl is about as old as she older than I am now, but she does artwork. But her artwork don't look no better than mine. Look, this is my artwork, right?
Oh, wow.
I did that. And I said, she got a lot of abstracts and stuff like really that. Nice. I said, this is amazing, But check her out. I can't think of her name, but if you look up Amos Drugstore, and they should show the pictures, and then they said that her artwork is in Spelman College. Spelman has a beautiful art gallery. Wow. I did view that when I went over that one time, but it has a very beautiful art gallery. And so the next time I go in now, I'm going to look for it. And I tell you somewhere else where that's good artwork too. Have you been to the nanatorium on well, if you go down Auburn Avenue,
Okay.
if you get off the expressway at Auburn Avenue
Hmm.
and you go down, you get off, you get off at Auburn, you make a right and you go up. The first street you can't turn up because it's a one way. You get to the next street, you can turn right. Go up that street. I think that's Bell Street. I'm not sure. But you go up that street. The nanatorium is over there.
Okay.
And this is fairly new. It's been up for about a year. But this is a nanatorium that's named for Dr. King. And you'll see his
Wow.
picture on the outside of the nanatorium. And if you go in the inside of the nanatorium, you will see long time ago, before they built the church over there across in front of Ebenezer Baptist Church, there used to be a nanatorium over there, and they tore it down. So this supposed to take the place of that nanatorium. Okay. And so therefore, I was lucky enough. I don't know if you call this luck or what, but all it does is put more pressure on me. Dr. King's secretary, Dora McDonald passed right after Mrs. King died.
Okay.
Now, Dr. Dora and I was not what you call close friends.
Okay.
In fact, she got in my way one time when I met this man, and I did not know he was married. And she went back and told Mrs. King, Pat is messing with the married man. Well, I didn't know the man was married. Okay. And so, anyway, she still worked for Dr. King, and she worked for Mrs. King too after Dr. King died. And Dora got sick, and she called me one Sunday in October, because that's when our church anniversary. And she told me she was at the hospital and she wanted me to come by the hospital. So she was down at Crawford Long Hospital. So after church at that time, go to church that morning. I didn't get out 6 o'clock that evening, but after I got out of church, I did go down to the hospital to see Dora. And Dora had been in there. She said she came in last night, but the doctors told me she had got in maybe Friday night. Anyway, Dora stayed in that hospital until January the 13th of that year, and she died. But before she died, she made me her executor over her estate,
Oh,
you
wow.
know. And so therefore, I had to see about Dora's stuff. Now, all this stuff I got in my garage, that I have a double car garage, but only one car can get in because I got stuff on this side of the garage that don't belong to me.
Yep.
that I got to get out my garage. But anyway, I keep losing my train of thought. I'm trying to figure out why I'm talking about Dora. Oh, okay, at the nanatorium. Okay, so Dora made me over her estate. So Dora wrote a book before she died. Okay, at least she wrote a book, and after she died, they were supposed to publish the book. But Hill Street Publishing Company was the one that was supposed to publish the book. And he knew that I was over her estate, and we communicated during the funeral process and everything. And he sent me this great big old picture of Dora to put in the funeral thing, the seed. Anyway, I got that. So the man know who I was, right? Anyway, for some reason, after Dora died, he quit communicating with me. But I promised Dora that I would get her book published, right? Anyway, the man quit communicating with me. His name was Tom Payton over Hill Street Press. And he had given all of Miss McDonald paperwork to this lady. She's dead now. Anyway, when I found out that that's what happened, I needed to get a lawyer. I ain't got no money. So I needed to get a lawyer. So I called around, and Walt Wright, who happened to be an accountant for Mrs. King, and he also know me very well. He said, I'll see if I can find somebody. So he sent me to Colony Square, to an office of a man. I've forgotten his name. And he said, well, he didn't like Andy anyway. Andy and I was like, I am the executive, I guess that's how you say it. And he was co, meaning that when I can't do my job, he takes over for me. Now ain't nothing wrong with me, right?
No.
So I'm trying to do my job. And so Andy had taken over the job that I was supposed to do. So, but anyway, as long as he got those book published, it was okay. But he had given, Tom Payton had given the copies to this one lady. And she called me one day and she told me, she said, I would like for you to come over to Andy's office, which was at the Georgia Public TV station, so we can discuss how we're going to work, get their book out. Well, I was for what they were saying. They was going to do this thing called self-publishing. And what self-publishing mean is that so many people will go in and say, I'm going to buy the book. And they publish those many books. Okay. But I am the executive of the estate. So I have to sign off on it. Well, I didn't sign off on it because it was some parts of the book that didn't sound like Dora, that she said. So I did talk with Bernice King about it, and Bernice agreed with me. So we got this lady that sent what you call it, cease and desist, where they're not supposed to do anything.
Mhm.
So since I wasn't nobody, they ignored me.
Uh-oh.
They ignored me, and they went on and they printed the book.
Oh wow.
Okay, and then one day I got 20 copies of the book on my doorsteps, on my porch. And okay, I took the books in and everything, but I'm still upset because you overlooked me. You really just took me for granted and just didn't do anything. So therefore, I decided I get this lawyer, right? I ain't got no money, but I'm gonna get this lawyer. Anyway, this man introduced me to this fellow named Ryan somebody. I got his name written down. And it's just so happened that this man named Ryan grandmother used to own Dansby's store, which was on Auburn Avenue, which Mrs. King and Dr. King used to do their shopping, grocery shopping. And these people used to deliver groceries to Mrs. King's house on Sunset every week. Miss King will give me a list, we'll place the order, and they will bring it to Sunset. And so when the man found out that I had worked with Mrs. King and that I was still working for the King family and that I knew Dora, he said, you know what? He said, if my grandmother was living today, she will want me to help you. So he said, I will be your lawyer pro bono. Now he was a Jew. So he was my lawyer. He did everything he was supposed to do, but I could not sue this book company in Alabama because they had no money.
Mm.
But I tried, believe me, I tried very hard to sue him. I was gonna sue Andy. I was gonna sue. I was going sue crazy. I was gonna sue. I was gonna sue all of them because I felt like they disrespected me.
Mhm.
And because I wasn't nobody to them, they figured they could get away with it.
Right.
So that's why I was going to sue, but it just so happened I couldn't sue that man, that book company in Alabama, because they said it was on the campus of some school and they didn't have no money because it's a self-publishing book company in the first place. But I said all that to say that even though I did not, and I'm planning to republish Miss McDonald book. I'm working on it, but I just need some help and I need some funds. But anyway, I'm going to republish her book so it will get out, so that half the people in the world don't know she's wrote that book or that book was ever published. And so I do have a copy of it. And like I said, I'm going to republish it. But I have all her paperwork. I did get all her paperwork, and I got the copyright of the book. I got everything that the lawyer could get me. He did get me. And so down at this nanatorium, there are 3 pictures on the wall at the nanatorium. You have a picture of Dr. King and Mrs. King in a swimming pool that's on the outside of the wall by the pool, and it'll say from the estate of Dora McDonald by Patricia Latimore. And then you go inside the locker room to change into your swimsuit and come out on the other side of the pool. You'll see Dr. King in the pool swimming all by himself. All that comes from Dora's estate, which I have in my possession. And they had to pay me. I made them pay me for those pictures. Now I'm learning, and they still didn't pay me enough money. But like I said, I'm the new kid on the block, and I'm learning. I'm getting old. I realize that I need to be sitting down somewhere retired now. So now I'm all for Pat now. Nobody else. Anybody asks me for something, you got to pay me for my information.
Yes,
Say.
yeah. We appreciate you giving us some free information. We don't want to keep you too much longer, but we did want to kind of talk about our movement that's going on today, in contrast and comparison to the civil rights movement that you all went through in the 60s. And so we wanted to get your thoughts on just how you felt about this movement that these young people, us, are doing today, and just your thoughts on it, and just if there's any similarities and probably some differences too, about the great movement that you all, the Kings, and all the people you named, Boone, Lowry, CTV, and all of the greats of Atlanta, and how it compares.
Well, I'm really proud of the young people, especially this summer when they did it, and they did it peacefully, and in order. They seem to have organized it very well, and I thought it went very well. It's it's a little bit different, but if they can keep your composure and don't let they make you mad enough to start a riot or something, because that's what they expect us to do. And what they did this summer for June, what is it, June summer? I never heard of that word before until this summer. But I was totally impressed that the younger generation came out in such force, and that they are still sticking together, and they about the same. And it's what's so sad is that we're still fighting today for what they were fighting back 50 years ago, 52 years ago. And you'll think by now we have gotten past that point. But it shows you also that Dr. King's words are still relevant today. I mean, and that's what's so amazing to me. So every generation will probably have to go through this. But all I say, like I said before, I want us Black people to read our history. So when they said, now I'm not totally sure about taking down all this Confederate stuff, because I figured that if we don't know what happened back then,
how are we going to change it now?
How are you going to change it today? And some of this stuff I think needs to stay, so you can say, from what you came. I'm still dealing with it. Everybody I talk about it said, well, it got to go down. It got to go down. Maybe it do have to go down, but I don't know how you're going to take that carbon off of Stone Mountain.
Very true.
You know, some things you can't take down, and some things needs to stay up so that you can say this was Confederate, but we have passed that point now. But this is where we're going
Exactly. Like
now.
living in Stone Mountain now. Black people would never live in Stone Mountain before because it was called Ku Klux Klan territory.
Contra, right? And my mama told me not too long ago, and I told her, don't say that no more. Because my mother was raised. My mother is from Stone Mountain.
Hmm.
And
Okay.
yeah, she was from Stone Mountain, where the heart of the poor people were in Stone Mountain. And she said that she had to go sing for the Ku Klux Klan.
Wow.
And I said, now don't you say that to nobody else.
Oh my God.
I thought that was the most awful thing I ever heard.
Wow.
But you'd be surprised if what we don't do, we don't sit down and talk to the older people. But if you sit down and talk to some of the older people, they can tell you some stories you ain't never heard before.
Yes. You have told us plenty today. Yes, I agree.
They really could. And so when my mama told me that, I knew she was from Stone Mountain, and I know she was from the country part of Stone Mountain because I hated to go to Stone Mountain. And the reason why I hated to go see my grandparents, because they stayed in this shack. And in this shack, you can walk in the front door and walk out the front. You can walk in the front door and walk out the back door. And in this one shack, there was a bedroom, that was the kitchen, and that was the living room. But you had to go outside in this little wooden house to use the bathroom.
Wow.
I hated to go down to Stone Mountain. I hated it. And when we leave Stone Mountain, we used to keep straight down Memorial Drive. And somewhere down Memorial Drive, there was a dirt road. That dirt path led to Stone Mountain. And when we come back from Stone Mountain, my uncle stayed in Lithonia. We'll take another dirt road, we'll be in Stone Mountain. In Lithonia. And in Lithonia, my uncle had built his house from bricks, and my grandparents stand down there in this one wooden shack. It's a big difference. So therefore, I never went to the bathroom until we got to Lithonia.
Well, Miss Pat, we appreciate you sharing. We do have just a couple more questions for you, not too many, and really just real one large one. Because we are transitioning. We've heard tons of Black history from you today, and we really appreciate it because this was kind of like little known Black history facts about ATL. So we appreciate that. But we're moving into women's history, and so you have been speaking about, one of the sheroes of Black American history, and you being yourself as an untold Shiro. The people behind the scenes make it all happen. Coretta Scott King would not be who she is today without you being an integral part. So we wanted to know what was you all's role as women in the civil rights movement, especially when we have like all these newcomers, especially one of my Spelman sisters, Stacey Abrams, the ladies that started the Black Lives movement, Black Lives Matter movement. So we wanted to hear that women's part because we definitely want to celebrate Women's Black History Month in the right way.
Well, during the civil rights movement, I guess I was somewhere hiding because, like I said, I was afraid to say who I worked for, and it was a long time. And now when I tell people who I work for, I still don't tell them. But then if I'm sitting in a room with somebody that says something that I don't like, it makes my temperature rise. So I have to speak out because they don't know them. So don't talk about Bernice King. Don't talk about the King family because you don't know what I know. So I was kind of back then hidden, but I was able to see all these women in the movement. And I wish I had all my notes up here today because I can't remember these people's name, but it's one lady that they talked about in the paper last week. God, what's her name? And the King Center is doing something on the women of the movement too.
Oh, wow. Nice.
So you really need to look for that. The women's of the movement, Fannie Lou Hamer.
Hmm.
You know, it is a picture in King Center Library and Archives where Fannie Lou Hamer is lying on a bed, and you got these white policemen beating her. And see, she died during the civil rights movement.
Hmm.
You got of course you got Jean Young, who's not here today, and you got Juanita Abernathy, who died in the last year or so.
Hmm.
And you got um, Dora McDonald, who's never, uh, after she died, nobody know who she is, but she was Dr. King's personal secretary, and she knew how to do shorthand. And there is, I have a picture in my hallway of everybody that went to Onslow when he got the Nobel Peace Prize. And then Channel 2 last night, Friday night, they did a special on Zenona Clayton.
Hmm. Yeah, I like her.
Now, Sonona and I had a conversation recently, and I'm gonna tell you a little about Sonona. Sonona, I got to say this nicely now. Uh, um, Sonona was a good friend of Mrs. King and Dr. King. Sonona was shopping for Mrs. King during the funeral section. And you know, Mrs. King wrote a book. She has wrote 3 books. The first book she wrote was My Life with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And that's the one that you need to get that book. I don't know if it's published now, but that was the first book she wrote after Dr. King died. And in that book, she thanked everybody in the back. She thanked in the back of the book. She did a whole thing of thanking people. She thanked Sonona Clayton for buying her all of the black dresses that she wore to the funeral. She thanked Linda Page. And Linda Page is a hat designer from New York City. Now, she thanked Linda Page for making the hat. Okay. One day, Zenona got up, and she and Dr. King was sitting at the same podium, and she tells the story about her mom in the hat. Okay. And so Bernice said to her when she got off the stage, she said, Aunt, Linda, she said, your story is different from the story my mama tells.
Mhm.
And Linda says, what do you mean? No, she said, are you calling me a liar? She said, no, Aunt Linda, I'm not calling you a liar. So in a way, Bernice had the nerve to say, ask Pat, right? Okay, so that was the Regency Hyatt House gives this glass ceiling award every year.
Okay.
Bernice got the glass ceiling award about a year ago or 2 years ago, maybe. And Linda was there and Andy was there. So I got up, I went and spoke to Andy, and I went and spoke to Linda. And Linda said, oh, I'm so glad to see you. She said, I just been trying to call you, and I was trying to, and Linda has my telephone number. She said, but I don't have your phone number anymore. So I gave her my telephone number, right? She said, something I got to ask you because it's just bothering me so. So I said, okay. So Linda never called me, right? One morning, I get this call from Linda. I was totally knocked off my feet. And she said, I've been trying to decide whether to call you or not. She said, but I just got to find out from you what you think. I said, what's wrong? She said, she went on to tell me about the hat. And I said, really? I told her the story. I said, in Mrs. King book, Mrs. King thanked everybody that did. She named everything everybody did in that book. I said, she also thanked you for buying the outfits that she wore through her mourning section. And I say, and she thanked Linda for her hat. She said, but let me tell you the story of the hat. I said, okay. So Linda has this article that she has written that says she did Miss King's hat for the funeral. Well, okay. So Linda tells me the story about the hat. She said, Miss King called me one night and she said, Linda, I want you to go find the hat for the funeral. She said, I've asked Linda to do it already, but you know how Linda works. She works at the last minute. So I want you to see if you can speed things up.
Mm-hmm.
So Zanona decided that she would take on that responsibility since she know everybody in town. So Miss King had a particular hat that looked good on her face, and that her husband always told her that she didn't need to wear a big hat. She needs to wear a smaller hat so that her face can be seen.
Okay.
So she said, okay. So she gave Linda the hat and told Linda to see what she could do. Linda took the hat to Macy's millinery department and showed the lady the hat and said that I need to get this hat for Dr. King's funeral. So the millinery lady made a veil to go on the hat.
Mm-hmm.
Now the veil was made out of real silk. And at the end of the veil, there is a band going around the veil about that wide that was on that hat. And it put it, she put it on the hat and everything. And she took the hat to Mrs. King. And Mrs. King fell in love with that. Oh, this is so beautiful. This is so beautiful. Okay. Now this is what Linda told me now. She said, oh, it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. And so I said to Linda, I said, well, look like to me, you just took the hat and added a piece to it. She said, I did. She said, but I don't know what to do. I said, the next time you tell the story about the hat, you need to tell the story the same way you just told it to me. Because the hat was a hat that Linda had made. All she did was put the veil on it to make sure it would be appropriate for the funeral.
Mm-hmm.
My husband died in 97.
Mm-hmm.
And Linda thought it would be appropriate for me to wear the veil on my hat, right?
The same one from Martin Luther King's funeral.
No, not the same one. But I didn't want to wear it because I felt that everybody would think that I was copying off of Mrs. King.
Oh, okay.
But Linda went on and made my hat, which now that she done told me the story, now what I got to do is to go to Bernice and convince Bernice the right story. So in order to do that, I had to take my hat that Linda made me to compare it with the hat that Zanona had made, to make Bernice see that what Zanona was saying was the truth. Now the veil that Linda made for my hat was made out of what you call that stuff, that crinoline material, with the holes in it that you used to wear the F5 dresses with that knit around it. My veil was made out of that kind of stuff, and it had rickrack around the tail of it. There's a difference. Now Linda, Miss King hat was made out of silk. You see what I'm saying? So I took my hat to Bernie's house along with the picture that we have of Linda's hat that who gave me, the man that in Linda's estate gave me I forgot his name, but his name is on the picture. He gave me the picture. I got the picture, Slay. His name is Slay. Slade took a picture of Mrs. King at Dr. King's funeral with the hat on, and Bernice is sitting in the lap.
Yeah.
That's a famous picture. So I have that original picture by the man that took the picture.
That's nice.
Uh-huh. And so with me comparing the two, so that Bernice wouldn't be mad at Zenona and Zenona wouldn't be mad at Bernice. I don't know if I solved the problem, but at least I had both of the hats in front of me, so you can see that what Zenona just said, that she took it to Macy's to let the millinery department do it, and that the hat really was the hat that Linda made. And like I told Linda, the next time she needs to tell that story, she needs to tell it the way she told me. And then everybody would know that the hat was Linda and the other part was from Macy's department store.
Oh, Lord. Sound like y'all was on some fashion wars in the
Oh, God, girl, please. And I always land in the middle, just ask Pat, right? Well, Pat has gotten old, and some of the stuff I don't remember. I can't recall offhand. I have to go back to my notes and everything. But I hope that you all have learned something and that I could share some things that you did not know.
Absolutely. We want to thank you so much for joining us today. We have learned so much from this conversation. We're completely humbled and honored to be talking to you today. And we're just so thankful that you joined us for this conversation. Much needed.
Yeah, trying to make me feel important.
Much needed. You are important. You are important. You are part of history. Okay.
And I appreciate you just answering the call when I reached out to you. So thank you so much.
Yeah, you always have answered my call when I feel obligated. I say, I can't tell this girl no. But that's what you call payback. It's good.
Yeah.
Like I say, thank you all for asking me and believing in me enough to think that I could be on your program today. Like I said, I hope I've said something that enlightened you, maybe encourage you to want to do something great and work with the movement and keep everybody straight and learn your history because the history is all that you got and you don't need to lose not one piece of it.
Absolutely. Well, today's podcast will be available on most streaming platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts.
Oh, really?
Yep, all three.
Okay.
So thank you so much.
Thank you, and thanks for having me.
You're welcome.
Yeah, have a good rest of your day. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right.
We're good.
Hey, everyone, because hey, everyone, this is...
Y'all ready?
Water.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, you want me to start, Monique?
I can start, or you can start. Sorry.
They want us to do the plug then with YP.
Yeah. We're gonna like, hey everyone, this is Celine Craig, public health. Monique Nicole, writer, photographer. We are members of Urban League. Yeah, you got it. Hey everyone, this is Monique Nicole, writer and photographer here in Atlanta, Georgia.
And this is Celine Craig, public health professional from Metro Atlanta as well.
We are members of Urban League of Greater Atlanta Young Professionals, and this is
Plug In with YP.
Was that on cue? Does that sound like we were off?
But it was.
I don't know if we should do that plugged in YP part again. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, or if worst case scenario, you all take turns saying it, and I can just layer it on top of each other to make it sound like it's at the same time. That's worst case scenario. So
that might be
give
good.
it a try.
Okay.
That might be good because there's lags in different people's Zooms, and I think that's what it was. Because I was trying to say it with you, and I was like, it don't sound. She's slowing down, and I'm trying to say it with her.
It's definitely a Zoom thing.
It's a Zoom thing. So go ahead, go do yours, and I'll do it.
And this is Plugged In with YP.
And this is Plugged In with YP.
You went acapella? Okay, I could do that. Soprano. Hold up. I'm just kidding. We're gonna leave it. Okay, sorry.
Right. So oh, my bad.
We wanted to create a voice for young professionals here in Atlanta. We will be covering an array of topics from community service to how the Urban League and YP are working and showing up in the greater Atlanta community.
And so today's episode, we have the great chance to have a personal conversation with Patricia Latimore, who is the assistant to Coretta Scott King and really her go-to person, right-hand man. And so we wanted to end Black History Month on an awesome note with this little known Black history of Atlanta, as well as bringing in women's history in the right way. So we hope you'll enjoy the conversation, action-packed, full of juicy secrets of Atlanta's history that I know you all are really, really going to inspire you and really bring a jewel to you.
And how did that sound?
Alton, how'd that sound?
It sounds fine. I got what I need. I've also recorded on my end as well. Or just, I guess, the general consensus. What time limit are we trying to keep the episode under? Is it an hour, 30 minutes? Like this particular episode?
Ooh.
Yeah, pause the recording.
I'm
good. So on this episode of the podcast, we will have a chance to talk to Patricia Latimore and have a special, intimate conversation with who was the personal, sorry. X out it out. Sorry. Okay. So on this episode, we have the chance of talking with the personal assistant of, well, no, because see, that don't sound right either.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll say her name first and then say who was the assistant.
Yeah.
Okay. So on this episode, we will be having a personal conversation with Patricia Latimore, who was the personal assistant of Coretta Scott King herself for over 40 years, started her career as a teen, and now serves as the archivist for Coretta Scott King's estate at the King Center. So we are in for a special treat. We are so glad that we were able to get her on and have her kind of start off Women's Black History Month. And we have other episodes that will be featuring other women in Black history as well coming out this month. So we're super excited to have her. And we are going to have, so just X out that and just talk about the part about finishing. Yeah, cut that.
You did it perfect. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was good.
I think between the first and the second, he can get it together. The only thing I would have you add is there a transition into kind of where we want her to start with her story from your intro into the interview with her?
Oh, but okay, so you don't want to put in what you were with, because I don't know how we got to talking, but
that was kind of Lydia's fault a little bit, because I was looking like, Lydia, you started too early.
Yeah,
I wasn't thinking, because she said, well, what do you know about me? And so I was trying to answer her question. And really what I was hoping she was going to be like, oh, well, you got it. And then we can start. I was not expecting her to jump right in. So apologies to me. Apologies on my part, because I was.
She did put you on the spot.
I was not expecting her. And I was totally like, this is what we know. And this is why we wanted you to come and talk to us. Is there something you want us to know? And then she started in and literally Monique was like, should we get recording? And literally as you were typing that, I was like, go ahead and hit record.
I said, this sounds like the podcast intro. I think we should just go ahead and hit record.
Yeah, so apologies. I was not expecting to ask, because I didn't ask a something specific you want us to know. And I even said, and then we'll get started.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. But it's not really you. It's just I remember what Celine was saying, so I kind of was like, once you said what you said and she started rolling, I was like, oh yeah, okay.
I told y'all, I was like, and then Monique had to stop her at one point. I was like, thank you, because I was trying to get it together. My life over here, and I was like Monique got it, thank you.
All right, we're recording.
So Miss Pat got right into the conversation, and we are starting this conversation to set the stage of really how Miss Pat got started as the personal assistant to Coretta Scott King, and she jumped right in. So we're gonna jump right in and enjoy, guys.